Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the show. It is episode 343, and it's November 1st, 2022. I'm joined once again by Kyle Klingman up in Cedar something, Iowa. Kyle, how the heck are you?
How could I not be doing great with our guest today? Bill Zadick's a stud. Love this guy. Super excited to dive in with a great person in the sport.
Absolutely. Let's waste no time. Let's bring him on. Head coach, Team USA, the reigning, defending Team World Champions. Bill, thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right, let's get this business out of the way. Did you trick or treat last night? And if so, did you dress up?
I did trick or treat and I did dress up. Yep.
Well, were you?
So I have two kids now. My wife and I, Samantha and I, have two children. Carmi is 3 and our son Gus is 9 months. So we went as the Flintstones.
Fred,
We did the
I'm
family
assuming.
thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was fun.
that's
It was
fantastic.
fun. There's a thing in Colorado Springs, Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and they do a thing called Boo at the Zoo. So you walk around, they have tables set up for the kids to go up and trick or treat at the tables, and then you go into all the exhibits, and the little kids love it. I actually like it. It's a really cool zoo, so it was fun.
Sweet. All right, last order of business here. What's your number one favorite candy? If you were trick or treating, what would you want to get?
Probably Reese's peanut butter cups.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, we got a lot of Whoppers last night, and I was feeling a little bit. I'm like, come on, man, I could buy my own crackers. Like, we need let's get the good stuff over here.
I hear you. I'm a Twix guy. Kyle knows that. Kyle, what's your candy of choice?
Reese's Pieces, probably. I'd say
Reese's
that's my
Pieces.
number one. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
those.
All right.
Yeah, it's actually really close for me because the little Snicker bars are pretty high on the list too. That's more of a nostalgic thing. When I was a kid, we'd always have them in our backpacks and stuff like that. But yeah, Reese's peanut butter cups pretty good, pretty hard to beat.
I agree. All right, enough Halloween. Let's talk some wrestling. Obviously, the World Championships just happened. Maybe a month ago. Out in Belgrade, Serbia, we won twice now in your tenure. We've won team titles. It's been fantastic. As far as the acclimation, do you guys still go to Germany and do acclimation camp at Ramstein area?
We did do acclimation in Germany this year. Yes.
Is that just kind of
Yeah,
go ahead? Yeah.
it's a great place. Germany's a great country. Westernized, modern, clean. People are friendly. It's easy to, mainly it hits our markers from a physiological perspective. As far as many of the world championships in the last quad or quad and a half have been in Middle Europe, and so it's a really easy launch pad from Germany to get to anywhere else. So yeah, it's been good for us.
Sweet. I want to talk about a handful of the weight classes. We'll start with Yianni at 65 kilos, and I know probably us and media and wrestling fans more than you think about it, but this streak, right? It dated back to your 2006 gold medal. We hadn't had one at that weight in we're looking at 15 years or something like that almost.
Yeah.
And Yanni's back on, I believe, his second team. What were your thoughts on Yianni coming in? Because I talked to him a couple weeks back, and he said, yeah, back in I think it was 19 when he won the U.S. Open, and he beat like 3 studs in a row, and it looked like, oh my gosh, this might be his weight. But he said, I forget exactly how he put it, but he's like, I was having some success, but almost tricking myself because I was beating some good guys, but I couldn't do it consistently, and I couldn't do it at the Worlds consistently. But I've grown so much that I'm much better now, even though he had all those big wins back then, and he's found this more consistent. I guess what are your thoughts on Yianni and how much he's changed over the last couple of years and improved, and in what ways?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a deal where, at this level, at the senior level, you're splitting hairs, right? The difference between, I've said this on other interviews and other times is when you get to a World Championships or Olympic Games, every guy in the bracket is the national champ from their country, right? So you're not trying to grow, you're not trying to make up this much difference. You're trying to make up this much difference, right? And there's probably 5, 6, 7 guys that are really capable of winning that world championship, and maybe more. And so you're really splitting hairs. And so the differences can be very subtle. It's a very small refinement at times. And a lot of that is mental or emotional. And of course, there's tactical and technical things too. But I think that's really, in large part, where he's grown. And it's a very deep weight all across the world. It's a very deep weight in the United States. It's because it's kind of in the middle where, the average body type is. It's always going to be that way. And so I think he's grown a lot in just his maturity and his perspective and how he goes out and competes. And we've had some conversations, and it's the conversation we have with everybody we believe in, that makes our team. We believe in everyone. And it's a deal where if you make our team, there's a high level of expectation for you to be a medal contender and to be a gold medalist. And so getting yourself from being this really good, exceptional guy, athlete, so that you can kind of, the phraseology that we've talked about is going from being able to beat anyone at any time to going to a place where you can beat everyone every time, and that's, it's a lot of things. It's a combination of things, and everybody's formula is a little bit different, but that's where he's trying to get to. And I think he made some big steps this year, and we're super proud of him for winning a medal and putting himself in that position and helping the team the way he did. But we also know that he's got a lot loftier goals in his mind, and we have for him too. And so, he's a great kid. Obviously, he's super fun to work with, and I think that's kind of where he's growing the most.
Given what you just said, that you're not trying to make up this much, you're trying to improve that really small amount because it is so competitive. Like, do you have to wait for the tournament to be over to understand, like, okay, Yianni has grown? Do you have to wait to see these results and see him progress? Or did you feel, I'm sure you always have confidence in these guys, right? But do you know from the onset, like, okay, he's closed that gap?
No, I think you see those things and sense those things. But I mean, the reality is you never know until the tournament's over, because that's why we wrestle a tournament. Otherwise, we just phone the results in. Well, this guy's practicing. He's practicing really well, right? Or he beat this guy at this tournament by 8 points, and that guy only beat him by 4 points. Well, you can never really apply the transitive property in our world, right? In combatives, you can't apply the transitive property in wrestling, because there's differences in styles and body types and statures and whatever it may be. And so, but yeah, I think you have a sense of that. I think we had a sense of it all summer, watching him compete at the trials and seeing him compete throughout the summer cycle, the World Championship cycle. I think we had a pretty good idea.
And maybe you have to wait for the tournament to play out, but let's just go match one, right? He wrestles Tavanyan. He lost last year. He beat him about 4-0 or 5-0, maybe more, but he kind of handled it and maybe made those adjustments he couldn't make last year. Did that at least tell you something after match one? Like, okay, now this kid, he's found another gear.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that, you have confidence because you see him every day in the practice room, and you see him making those adjustments in the room, and the more consistent those adjustments are being made, the more confidence we have, right? And it's still no guarantee, right? You still have to go and do it on the day. And you got a 6-minute window in order for that to happen. You got to do it, 4 and 5 times in a row. So yeah. But each little notch in that belt gives you more confidence.
Jordan Burroughs, one number 7. You know,
Yeah.
he's been talking about this since 2011. Really, you know, he's not been quiet about, hey, I want to be the best. I want to have the most medals. I want to be the most highly decorated. Is that anything he's ever discussed with you, whether in depth or just casually?
No, we don't. I know these guys have goals for themselves. My goal for them is for them to be the best that they can be, and ultimately be the best in the world at a given moment. And those two things are big challenges. And so all the other things I try not to focus too much on, because I think it invites, negative pressures and other things. I mean, we address them as they need to be addressed. But stuff like that, GOAT conversations, greatest of all times. I mean, he certainly has the most gold medals now of any American, and that's a cool thing. I remember early on as an assistant on staff at USA Wrestling, and when I was the developmental coach, forming a developmental philosophy. And I'm looking at the Russian team, and I'm thinking back to like 2010 when we kind of had a really low performance. We had no medals that year, and Russia, on the other hand, they have 2 and 3 guys on the team that have multiple golds, not multiple medals, multiple golds. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? Why can't we do that? We can do that. We have just as good of athletes. We have smart people. We have great wrestling minds. And so, that kind of shaped my philosophy a little bit on the developmental side of things. And Jordan, he came around a year later and was a real spark plug for our team, and has continued to be. And he's put himself on a course of success, and that's been unparalleled, and it's remarkable. It's super exciting. It's fun to be a part of. But I think my philosophy about stuff like that is nobody made John Smith. I mean, lots of people made him. Thousands of people made him, right? Thousands of people made Jordan Burroughs. Thousands of people made me. But the individual has to make that decision, right? Jordan made that choice. He's like, there's a lot of hard things to go through for him to get to that pinnacle. And lots of people have poured into him. Coach Manning, all of his training partners, my colleague James Green, now Coach Slay, Coach Burnett, tons of people have poured into Jordan. But Jordan had made those choices. Each time there was a decision to be made, he made it in a forward move, in a forward direction where he wanted to go. And so, yeah, he's remarkable. He's a remarkable individual, remarkable competitor. And there's so many storylines within that, and it's not really my story to share, but I'll kind of tease up some stuff. And this goes for all of our athletes on this team in the last couple of years. There is so much going on behind the scenes that people don't know, that it would blow people's minds if they knew what was actually going on behind the scenes, and them accomplishing what they're accomplishing. It's absolutely remarkable.
Are you talking about things specifically at the tournament, or things going on in their lives outside of the tournament, or?
I'm talking about all of it. I'm like I said, it's not my story to share. I'm going to tease it up, and you guys, you can dig on it. You can dig into it, and maybe, that's for them to share their personal stories. But it's, I'll tell you this, what Joe Russell and Kevin Jackson and now James Green, what we get to see in the room when these guys are competing. I mean, you think watching the World Championships is fun. You should see what I see. You should see what I see. It's yeah, these guys they're exceptional.
I've seen it, not as much as you. I have got to see it, and it's awesome to see your guys' practices for sure. And probably not what you're talking about, but Zane was on here last week or two ago as well. He talked about like when you're in the tunnel getting ready to go out, and there was these guys like pulling their singlets up and yanking on their shorts, making sure they weren't
Yeah.
too long, and I think he actually had to drop, take his under the drawers
very,
off of.
very weird situation. New interpretation about your undergarments, about not wearing spandex, like 2 layers where, the singlet slides over the biker shorts type spandex thing to create an unfair advantage. I just think, it got to be a little bit weird at the World Championships, and of course I'm biased, right? I'm all about protecting and preserving my athletes' competitive advantage. So I was Coach Cody went out with Casey, or went out with Zane, and then Coach Joe went with him. And so I didn't go with Zane on the mat. I was coming up behind with Jordan, and we had a similar thing with Jordan too. And I get queued up about what's going on with Zane when I'm in the warm-up area with Jordan, and I'm like getting enraged. So then when it happened to Jordan, I was irritated, I was pretty sensitive. But I don't think what happened to Jordan was as bad as what happened to Zane. But yeah, I mean, I think he took his, rather than deal with the hassle, he's got some paid, guy off the street debating whether those are underwear or they're biker shorts. And I'm like, not a good thing for, our sport, really, I think, to be debating on what people's undergarments are. Unless it's explicitly outlined in the rules, which there is no outline of that. So weird deal.
So you didn't get to see that with Zane, but he had to take him off. But you like put your foot down with Jordan. You just said no way.
No, well, we knew what was going on, right? But because it was happening the whole tournament. But usually they just wanted to make sure it wasn't hanging down below your singlet, right?
Uh-huh.
So guy had lift the sleeve of his leg, and that was it. Well, in Zane's final match, they used it to, and like I said, I'm biased. So I'm thinking, were we being too successful? USA was having too much success, and they were using it against us to, disrupt this guy's psyche before he goes out on the mat, because it was silly. It was egregious, like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that? Right? Are we going to be the sport that's checking people's undergarments? I don't think that's a good look.
Definitely not. Another thing I wanted to touch on is you're the head coach of the team, and then there's obviously these individual coaches, right? And so,
yeah.
And I don't think that this takes place at the World, but I would assume, and a lot of them you have relationships with, and then a lot of the same guys year over year. But do you have discussions, or even when they first make the team on, or national team on, and hey, what's the dynamic and how do we work best together? And maybe that's something that's, going back to your first year, has that changed at all?
Yeah, we talk about it, when somebody makes the team, we start that conversation early on, like, who's your personal coach? Who do you want in your corners? And we build rapport and relationship throughout the summer and try to add consistency, just so that we're communicating the best we can and giving the athlete, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, because ultimately it's the athlete out on the mat, and they're making the decisions, and they're prepared. These guys are prepared, and they're pros, but it's a small thing that we pay a little bit of attention to make sure that we're managing the mat, externally the best we can.
Sure. Okay. I want to talk about David Taylor. I think he wins at first 3 times against Yazdani, wins the Olympic gold, and then 2 months later drops the one in Oslo.
Yeah.
Man, he looked like he was amazing. I think he scored 40 points and gave up 1 maybe. Did you notice anything different about him this time, or was it just David as usual and he just?
I think it was David as usual. I think he made some adjustments. Clearly, he made some really positive adjustments, and most of that was his own strategy. You know, he did a really good job. And I think, you know, in Oslo, you know, I know he was upset and really hard position, I think. You know, when you look back to Oslo, um, there were 6 Olympic champions that competed in Oslo, and only 2 of them won. I think one of the women, and then Sajalayev, and so it's a really tough, you know, position to be in. I think you know, in the frequency of the Olympic Games to the World Championships being 2 months apart. I mean, do you maintain this emotional peak and ride the tidal wave, or do you allow yourself to come down and then rent back up? And you know, I just think there's a lot to it. You know, this um, pinnacle of our sport, this emotional swell that you know that you get to, and then you hardly get to enjoy it. And so I think it actually, well, statistically, it bears it out, right? Statistically, the underdog was the favorite in
Sure.
Oslo, and so and David, I mean, honestly, he's one scenario, right? He has a leg in the air, and he kind of went for a 4-pointer instead of just taking the 2-pointer and putting himself on top and an opportunity to turn. I think that changes that Oslo final match too. But so he made his adjustments and you know, really trained with something in mind and wrestled how he wanted to wrestle. I think he was a little disappointed in wrestling in Oslo. Not that he did a bad job, but obviously disappointed in the result. But I think he felt like he didn't do what he wanted to. And I think he set his mind to just wrestling how he wanted to this year, no matter who his opponent was. And he obviously did a great job, and it was super exciting match. Super exciting match. I mean, man, he just, you know, 2 great competitors, right? It's maybe the marquee matchup in, you know, in the world right now. And everybody that knows anything about our sport, that's one of the big matchups that they want to see, right? And so that's always going to be a barn burner. It's always going to be, you know, an all-in type bout. And super happy for David, and he did a great job. Did a really good job.
Yeah, I would call it the biggest rivalry, and
Yeah.
probably going on in the world right now, especially considering the Russians weren't there. And that's the next thing I want to talk about is Russia's not there, right? They're
Yeah.
very, very good. Is this
Yeah.
something you guys talked about? Because you probably, I mean, everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall, and there was, I think, you know, it seemed like they weren't coming. But you know, we talked to Gilman beforehand, and he didn't say that maybe he thought they were coming, but he basically said he's like imagining they are, or prepared for that could happen at the last second, because he wants to prepare for the best. And I'm just curious if you guys
Yeah.
addressed it at all.
Yeah, we didn't focus on it a ton, but we do talk about, you know, being prepared for anything, right? Being prepared for any change, right? I mean, you know, college guys going out on the mat in the NCAA finals, and you can't find your headgear. You know, you got to be ready for that. Like, you know, you can't let things like that fluster you, and especially things that are out of your control. And the situation with the Russians and Belarusians being allowed to compete or not allowed to compete, that is not within our control. So we talked about it a little bit from that standpoint, and that was about it. Just be prepared. You know, each of these guys knows what they needed to do to be the best in the world, and we try to keep focused on those details, and then just be open-minded to the rest of everything.
Sure. We had, I think, 8 in the finals. We've talked about a handful of guys who have done awesome. We haven't even talked about Dake and Snyder yet. They both got their 4th gold, and this is like the 3rd or 4th thing we're talking about. Now, and you talk about 2010, right? We didn't have any
Yeah.
medals, and that really 11, I think Varner and Jordan, and 9 wasn't great.
Jordan, man, 2 medals. Varner was bronze, and Jordan gold, obviously.
Yeah. And we've just, like, how far we've come since then, right? And then people call this the golden era of wrestling. I think we had 6 guys on the team that had won at least one gold medal. A bunch, I don't even know how many there are total.
Yeah.
When I guess we'll just go back to 2010 from your point of view. I'm not sure if you were a developmental coach at that point or not, but
I wasn't. I started right after that. I
okay.
switched. I was an assistant national coach at the World Championships, and when I came home, I assumed the developmental role after that.
If somebody would have pulled you aside in 2010 or even we'll go before 2011, before Jordan burst on the scene, and said, hey, in 2022, we're going to win a team title in 17 and again in 22, and we're going to have 6 guys on the team that have golds. If we told you all these accomplishments back in 2010, would that have seemed realistic that it could happen? I mean, I guess 12 years is longer than 12 years. It's been a long time, but
I mean,
still, it's remarkable.
I guess, it did seem possible. I mean, that's what gave us the belief, right? Is I know this thing is possible, right? I know it's possible. It's just how do we get there? How do we get from where we are to where we know we can be? And we're in a unique period of history, right? We have, we're in a situation where we have 5, 6, 7, 8. We have a whole roster. We have 10 generational athletes on our team, right? And maybe that only comes around every 25 or whatever years. I was talking on another interview that this team gets compared to like the teams of the 70s, 72, 76, gets compared to the teams of the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And history will determine, whether this group measures up to those others. But when you just talk about it in those terms and look at it from a timeline standpoint, it's kind of about every 20 to 25 years, right?
Yeah.
You had the 70s teams, you had the late 80s, early 90s teams, and then now. And so, I don't know, maybe there is something to that. I don't know, but I do. Obviously we thought it was possible, and it's remarkable that it's happening now. And there's a lot of things that come into play, but it's fun to knowing how hard these guys work, how much they've dedicated themselves, their families, their training partners, their RTCs, all of their coaches from the time they were little kids. A youth level coach that sets a kid on a right path, that kid leaves his stable and goes on to a college program or something like that. That work isn't done. It's not like that gets left behind. That athlete carries that with them. And now we're, seeing the fruit of that work bearing out for these athletes. And that's a really rewarding thing. It's really exciting to have a team that has several guys who are multiple medalists and multiple gold medalists.
Yeah. Back, I get to Zane for a second. Zane came on, and man, we were going back and talking about years past and making teams and falling short, and not, his Olympic trials performance. And he was really honest and open and just talked about, doubt creeping in and mental struggles, and it's crazy, from my point of view. You hear a guy like Zane, you're like, this guy won 2 Hodges. He went 3 years undefeated in college, and then
world champ.
Yeah, it's like it has to deal with everybody. He's like, everybody doubt creeps in, and that's okay. And he's telling us about these books he's reading and the ways he's handled it. I mean, is that a conversation that you have with athletes very often, or more than you think, or not that much?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a little bit of both. You don't have it that often, but it might be more than people think. I think from the outside, people think, well, guys like that have accomplished so much, they're like invincible mentally, right? Their confidence is like, but that's, it's a human characteristic. We all have doubt. We all have questions about what we want to accomplish and whether it will be realized or not. So yeah, it's I think I think it's one of the most important things that we deal with as coaches, the techniques and all that stuff. It's important too, but it's more nuts and bolts. This is like, these other things are really the separators.
Yeah, it seems like it. And like I said, it was awesome to hear him kind of dive deep into that side of the sport.
I'm really happy for Zane that he won a medal. I mean, I know he wants more for himself too, but I'm very happy because I know as time goes on, he'll see more value in that accomplishment, and he still has a lot of road to travel if he wants to, And so I think he's got bigger and brighter things in his future, and but we've believed in him from the time he made the team. And now, I think he's proven to himself, yeah, I know what it takes. I've been doing the right things. And sometimes when you're doing the right things and not getting the result that you want, it's a struggle. It's a struggle in perseverance to just stay the course and not totally overhaul everything you're doing. It just, you gotta be mentally rigid.
Yeah. These guys are.
Yeah, he's done a great job.
For sure. Jaden Cox is at 92. He took, another silver, which is great. He has said, I believe he said he wants to go up next year, right, and try to face Kyle and be there. Is that something you want? You care? You want him to be at 92? You're like, hey man, do whatever you want and do what you got to do. Clearly, the team's going to be better off if he's at 92, but I do see hey, I want to get my body ready to go for 97 for the Olympic year.
Yeah, we basically had the exact conversation you just outlined. I mean, of course, we have a really good team when he's at 92, and but it's ultimately it's up to him. It's his decision. I laid it out and. I'd love to see you there because I think our team's the strongest in this situation. But you got to do what you got to do, and try to make the best decision for him, and let him make that decision what he wants to do in his path, and then help him the best I can, and help our team too. So if he decides to go up, we need a quality representative at 92, and there's some good guys out there, and we'll do everything we can to help them get better and let them decide it, amongst themselves, who's the best guy.
Fair enough. And trials process. I know Klingman said he had a couple questions and wanted to ask you about the trials process.
Yeah.
Just wondering how that's going to happen. I know from last year, a lot of people were confused by it, and I don't know if you get on the inside of what that confusion is, but even people in Coralville that were diehard fans said, you know what, Kyle, I didn't show up. I really didn't know what was happening. So you have a U.S. Open, trials process, Final X. Any thoughts on cleaning that up and making it more of a straight line process?
Yeah, we're actually in process of that now, and it's there's a lot to creating a trials process, and this year even more because the year prior to the Olympic Games has bearing on the Olympic trials process. So the USOPC has a stake in that approvals. So there's been a lot of thought into streamlining. It just gets really complex when you're trying to create a process that incentivizes the characteristics you want in your team. So when you talk about, we've mentioned 2010 and we had no medals, and now we have this proven performer reward. If you're the incumbent medal at a weight, you get to sit out to Final X. And then, but you have to have an open process for others to come through and identify themselves to be, and that needs to be fair and open. And so it gets pretty complicated, but when you start to streamline and reduce the number of competitions, you still have to maintain the open inclusiveness. And so, yeah, we're in the midst of that right now, and it goes through several levels of approvals, and I think we're coming up with a very good process, though.
When do you think they'll be done,
I
really
think,
settled?
I think at the latest, early in 23, it will be announced, if not sooner, but I would say by the latest, early in 23, it will be announced. So it's abundantly clear, people will have time to read through it, digest it, understand okay, I want to make the team, this is how I do it. Coaches, clubs, everybody can look at it. And they've all looked at it because it's had several rounds of edit to it already. Like, we put it out, hey, this is the feedback we've gotten from everybody, from the athletes, from the coaches, from the clubs. This is what you guys have suggested. This is how we see it fits in line with our mission. And so, yeah, I think by the, if not sooner, probably early in 23.
Sounds good. And then Kyle Kleeman's also got a little game we like to play. He's gonna throw some questions at you and try to stump you here, Bill.
That's probably not too hard.
I am curious though, who's going to be at the World Cup for the Americans? Have you decided on who will be there? Are we going to see our best stars at the World Cup coming up?
We're getting close. We're getting close. We don't have a team finalized yet, but we're pretty close.
What does that mean? Are we going to?
That means that we're pretty close, but we're not announcing it today.
Okay. All right. You ready to play our game, Bill?
I'm ready.
You played it once before. It's called Sweat It Out. 5 questions, hoping to make you sweat. Here we go. Number 1. What Great Falls, Montana native officially made the 2008 Olympic wrestling team hours before the start of the men's freestyle competition?
I don't know. That's a pretty tough one. Yeah. Obviously, my brother, it's a pretty cool deal.
Mike Zadick, you got it.
I mean, Kyle, they're going to get a little tougher than this, right?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, yeah, I was kind of being a little bit humble that you'd be easily stumping me, but if you make them too easy, I'm going to get insulted that you think I'm that dumb.
Okay. All right. Well, number 2, 3 Montana natives represented the United States at the 2021 Olympic Games. Name 1.
3 Montana natives?
Yep.
I couldn't name one of them. I'm stumped.
You talking smack about the first question, and then
yeah, well,
a tough one.
I didn't watch. I don't pay attention to much outside of wrestling.
Okay,
but let me think. I know in 16 there was a gal from Whitefish that played rugby sevens. I don't know if she was on the team in 20. I'm trying to think of her name. She actually came up to me in Rio because she wanted to get involved in some wrestling. So I got her connected with Terry, and I don't know that she ever did. But who are they?
Allie Weiss, rifle. Buttes, Nick Moorer of rifle.
Oh yeah,
and pistol.
I know. I should have known that. Nick Moore is a shooter. He lives here in Colorado Springs. He's a Butte native. Yeah, I know him. He's a good dude.
Okay. And Whitefish is Nicole Heverland.
Nicole Heverland. Yeah. Did she play rugby sevens?
She's women's rugby.
Yeah, that's her. That's a gal. So she was on the team in 16 too. I didn't know that she was on the 20 team. In Tokyo, everything was pretty isolated, right? We never did go to the village. Our venue was like, well, with the stripped down Olympics the way it was, with COVID, we were an hour and 40 minutes outside of the village. If they would have been a fully attended by fans, they said that transportation, it would have put us like almost 3 hours from the village. Cow. So our advanced plan was to never be in the village just because logistically it didn't make any sense. So you kind of miss out. That's some of the experience that the athletes missed out, was a little bit of that interaction, but obviously they performed well and it was a good thing for us. But yeah. So do I kind of get partial credit? It's like I kind of knew, but I didn't know.
I mean, he got it right there. I'll give him a half a point. We'll give him I'll
give you half.
half
Give
a
it
I
half.
thought I was wrong, but on further review, I was right all along.
Yeah,
Sort
you're
of.
right there. You're right there. Half, and then if we'll come to the end here.
You get your brick
Number
back.
3. What decathlete grew up in Missoula, Montana, and was a 1988 Olympic in Seoul before winning a bronze medal in the 92 Olympic Games?
Was it? It was the Dan and Dave campaign. Dave O'Brien and Dan O'Brien and Dave Johnson.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah.
Dang.
It's 100% point. That's a full point there.
That was huge. I remember that. Dan and Dave, Dan and Dave, Dan and Dave. And then one of them
Yeah.
messed up on the pole
One of
vault or
them ended
something.
up not making the team, and then the other one, yeah, it was a huge campaign.
Huge.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, name the Olympian who grew up in the ranches near Ashland, Miles City, and Lavina and made Olympic rowing teams
Kendall
in
Cross.
96. No, it's not. Or Olympic rowing.
Oh, you know, Kendall Cross was born in Miles City, Montana.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Most,
Kyle, you
most
knew
people
that?
don't know that. Most people don't
I
know
asked you
that.
that
He was
question last
born and
time,
raised in.
yeah.
I think he moved to Oklahoma when he was like 9 or 10 years old. So when you said Miles City, I was like, oh, Kendall.
Yeah.
Kyle knows
No,
everything.
this is Ashland, Miles City, Lavina, and made Olympic rowing teams in 96 and 2000.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, that's you. I'm stumped on that one. You got me.
Okay, Monica Tranell.
Yep. Haven't run across Monica.
All right. And then number 5, what former D1 NCAA wrestling champion is currently a club coach in Belgrade, Montana?
Alan Freed.
Yep. Got
Oh.
it. 3.5.
Fantastic.
3.5.
We'll give him 3.5. 3.5 out of 5.
Okay. So what's that? It's like a B plus or something.
Yeah, you passed.
Yeah, you got that.
Pass.
Hey, how would you feel, or I guess that you wouldn't be able to really do anything, but like, the way that they promoted this Dan and Dave, right? And
Yeah.
Simone Biles and the swimmer, his name's escaping me. Who's the swimmer?
Michael Phelps.
Yeah, would you like it if they were promoting a wrestler like that, or you kind of prefer like, no, I prefer just that, leave him alone that way, that's a lot of pressure to carry.
Yeah,
But it's
it
also
is.
a lot. It's really good
yeah,
for the sport. So it's kind of a.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. But I mean, I think we got to have any sport that gets to the next level has a transcendent athlete, right? And we maybe Jordan is that guy. Maybe one of our women's athletes is that person. So if we want to get to that next level, and what does that mean? What does the next level mean? I don't know. I mean, everybody always wants more money involved, and
Right.
everybody wants to earn more. And, I think growing our sport to where we have more opportunity, it would be my spin on that. More weight classes included. If we could get to a place where we have 10 across the board, I think that would be amazing. That becomes a financial thing that's, can we go to the IOC and say, hey, when David Taylor and Yazdani are on this mat for this 6 minutes, there are going to be 8 million people in the world watching. They're going to tune in right here. Or when, Sidikov and Dake, or Sadulayev and Snyder, or whatever that matchup is, right? And so do we need a transcendent athlete to kind of get us to that next level to do that? Probably we do, I guess. But from a personal standpoint, yeah, I'm a coach, and I'm trying to get these guys to win every match that they wrestle. And so that you have to balance that, and that's a tricky thing. That's a hard thing when you have that kind of promotion, and really it's the money, and it's the time. At time it becomes a distraction. So can you manage that?
Yeah.
So
Just to follow up on that, Bill, I don't know if you remember this, but in 2000, Joe Williams was on a McDonald's commercial, and then Brandon Slay made the team. And I remember him saying that was something that motivated him going into 04, but it was just what you're talking about, maybe a little bit of a distraction because they had a McDonald's Olympic commercial, before he made the team, and
Yeah.
Joe Williams getting his hand raised, and then Slay makes the team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's happened, it's happened before and since, and but yeah, I mean, there's some marketing geniuses and broadcasting people and business people that probably have better ideas than I do, but um I would sure like to see whatever it takes for us to, whatever the markers are, that the powers that be make those decisions, right? The IOC makes those decisions on what advancement or growth in the Olympic program, whether it's new and innovative sports or a sport like swimming that's been around forever that applies for new events and gets more every time. How do we get in that club? How do we get into the position where we can go to them and say, well, we need 30 weights. We need 30 weights across the board. Is that scaling back to a single bronze at every weight class? And we get, I think it's more than that, right? I mean, that seems like an easy fix, but I think it's more than that. But whether it's this promotional suggestion that you're making, Mark, I think is probably a piece of it, to get to where you can prove to them, yeah, this financially pencils. This is culturally and financially relevant to the world. That when these people are on the mat, when Adeline Gray and Rotterfaken are wrestling, or Helen Maroulis and the Japanese gal, or Kyle Snyder and Sajalaev, or whomever it may be, Mion Lopez and Kialip are on this mat, this many million people are watching. And, right now, that many million people, do they know about those people? Does the world know about those people? Right now, man, if we can't grow our sport right now with the personalities and the stars that we have, then we should be working hard at it. I don't know what I can do because I'm like I said, I'm not genius, but we got some great personalities right now.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a tricky thing on our end, right? Because we're clearly in the business of promotion, and we are going to talk about these guys a lot and like put it out there because we want people to pay attention. And Zane even mentioned, I don't know if he wasn't upset with us or anything, but he's like, yeah, I really felt it, and especially in an event like Final X where it's real easy to market. You just have two people and you talk about the match, what could happen, what has happened in the past. But I'm sure they don't always love all that attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's the balance, right? The balance of invasiveness and distraction to the individual athlete and their performance versus the promotion. And you and I have had discussions before, right? I don't think those things are mutually exclusive, promotion and performance. But I do think it doesn't happen overnight. It takes some planning. Even UWW in the back of the house warm up type area, if there was like a marketing plan on like, hey, this camera crew is going to be wandering, roaming, they're going to be filming you warming up and stuff like that, but we're going to keep a reasonable distance, and they're not going to be like putting a camera 2 feet in front of your face while you're trying to shoot double legs. It's probably part and parcel of all of it, right? Is just coming up with a game plan and a strategy, and then executing on that and seeing what it produces. I mean, I'm super biased because I love wrestling, but I think it's interesting. And I think if we could tell the stories, right, maybe not everybody's going to fall in love with the technical things like I do. Like, I can sit and watch wrestling and analyze technique, but if we tell these personal interest stories, this behind the scenes stuff, like, guys and gals walking down the street to, find fresh fruit or fresh produce at the market when they're getting ready to compete. Because, everybody can kind of relate to that kind of stuff. Right. And I don't know. Just some ideas, but I think we got some great stories to tell. And I think, We have very relatable people with great character in all styles, and I think we have a very good product. And one of, I guess, last thing I'll say is one of the things I feel like we're too willing to take the crumbs of what's left, and it's like we're apologizing for our sport all the time. And I'm not passing any blame on anybody. I just feel like we need to go on the offensive. Like, let's get aggressive. Let's go after it. Let's show the world, instead of apologizing and taking what's left over. Let's go on the offensive and get after this thing and show the world. Yeah, and MMA's helped us, right? UFC's
For sure.
given a ton of credibility to wrestling, specifically in the combatives world. Like, it is by far the best base combative to have, and we need more of that. We need
Sure.
more of that.
Absolutely. You talk about all these great stories. I'm gonna pry. I might get shut down, but can you give me a hint of one of these things you were talking about earlier? You said if you could see what goes on behind the scenes, it would blow your mind.
Like I said, it's not my story to tell, right? I'm involved. I'm part of it, but I've probably given you enough already. Just ask them. I think if you ask them, they'll tell you.
Okay.
And if they don't want to, they don't want to. But yeah. I mean, you know who they are, right? You know them all. So
Yeah.
I think if you get them on and start talking, they might tell the stories.
All right. Kyle?
But Bill, real quick, Bill, I know that you're talking about Olympic promotion. You were raking in the cash in 2005.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You were rolling in it.
Yeah. I was dang near drowning in cash in my little dorm room over here at the training center. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot more, right? There's a lot more resources in these athletes. NIL is going to, we're getting into a whole nother realm of conversation, but that's changing our world quickly, and we don't even know what that's going to look like. But it'll sift itself out, and it'll figure it out. This promotional thing and growing our sport, it's still going to be there, because NIL, this, whatever happens there, we still have great athletes, we have great coaches, we have great stories, and people, I think, will enjoy it.
All right, we got to get to figuring out what these stories are. You're keeping them in the vault. I understand, but I'm always going to try to pry.
We can talk. We can talk.
Awesome. Well, Bill, it's been dang near almost been an hour now, so we're gonna let you get on with your day and move on. But we'll give you the final word to say anything you might want to say about anything.
Oh, I've probably said it all. I appreciate you guys having us on. Keep promoting our sport. Keep telling the great stories. Do that in good investigative work and find them. There's some cool stuff out there.
All right, we'll start digging. Thanks so much, Bill. Have a great day, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate you. All right, folks. Bill Zadick, two-time team champion, coach, world championships, Team USA. Yeah, great conversation, Kyle. Closing thoughts?
I like that you tried to pry. You tried one last shot to get what the behind-the-scenes stories are. You really tried to. I wanted to see who the World Cup team was going to be, but he wouldn't go there. But as always, Bill entertains. He's a good dude.
Yeah. Great show. Glad to have him as a guest in chat today. That's going to do it. So for Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Bader. We'll see you next time.